Good morning, everybody. My name is Denise Teweb, and today I'm going to take you through the NIST Risk Management Framework. And this is based on NIST Special Publication 837, Revision 2, in its draft format. Now, when they come out with the final publication, I will redo this presentation and probably present it at a conference next year. But I went ahead and downloaded the draft and took a look at it, and they made some pretty significant changes to it. And I think they're very beneficial changes. So what we're going to cover, and this presentation is over 100 slides long, so it's going to be intense, but we're going to very quickly cover, we're going to do an overview, why risk management is needed. I'll give you the background on the NIST Risk Management Framework, purpose and applicability, target audience, and how the publication is organized, and then we'll go from there. So that's this section. The overview: information systems are under constant attack. We all know that. And those organizations depend on information systems to successfully carry out the business functions. Those systems keep coming under threat, and the threats are coming more frequently. The most significant threats to systems come from purposeful attacks that are often disciplined, well organized, well funded, and sophisticated. Successful attacks on information systems can result in catastrophic damage to not just the organizational assets and operations, but also to your people, to other organizations, and if you're a federal organization or if you're in the critical infrastructure sector, then also damage to the nation. So we must respond by being vigilant. And at all levels of the organization, leaders and managers have to understand their responsibilities and be accountable for protecting the assets and for managing the security risk that fall under their leadership. So let's talk about what is risk. Risk is a measure of the extent to which an entity is threatened by a potential circumstance or event. It's also a function of the adverse impacts that would happen if the circumstance or events occurred and the likelihood of the occurrence. The types of risks that you're going to face are program risk, compliance, regulatory risk, financial, legal, mission, business risk, political, security, privacy, project risk, your reputational risk, safety, strategic planning, and supply chain risk. And supply chain risk is given a more significant covering in this publication as opposed to version 1. So organizations also have privacy responsibilities. So we must consider and manage the risk to individuals when information systems process personally identifiable information, also called PII. Information security programs and privacy programs have complementary objectives with respect to managing the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of PII. While many privacy risks relate to unauthorized access or disclosure of PII, keep in mind that some of the privacy risks result from authorized use of PII and other related activities. I mean, things like you're in a doctor's office and the personal information is on a chart that's kind of just left out on the front desk. There are all kinds of unauthorized handlings of PII that give rise to privacy risk. So managing privacy risk requires a close coordination between the organization's information security and privacy programs. Privacy risk raise distinct concerns that actually require a different set of expertise and different approaches to management. It is critical that your organization establishes and maintains a robust privacy program to ensure compliance with applicable privacy requirements and to manage the risk to individuals associated with the processing of PII. Okay, some risk management frameworks to consider when you're doing information security risk management. There's, of course, NIST 839, which is the risk management process. That's where you frame, assess, respond to, and monitor your risk. And under that falls NIST 830 for risk assessments, the risk management framework that we're talking about today, and some other publications. And then there's the ISO 2705 standard. There's the CIS Graham standard framework, and then there's the FAIR. And then you have program frameworks, which is your NIST cybersecurity framework that you use to stand up your information security program. And under that is ISO 27001. And then you have security control frameworks. And I know that I'm going quickly. These slides will be available. Frameworks that's going to be your NIST Special Publication 853, which is the catalog of all the security controls that you could possibly imagine. I'm sure everything's not in there, but there are over 1,000 controls in 853. NIST Special Publication 853 gives you guidance on how to assess each one of those controls. And then you have the CIS controls. Okay, the risk management process, I mentioned that briefly. That is the approach to managing risk. NIST 837 deals with managing risk down at the system level when you're actually implementing security controls. But before you do that, the risk management process is where you frame your risk, you assess the risk, you respond to it, and you monitor it. So that's why risk management is needed. Background. Okay, here's what's happening with the NIST Special Publications 837, the framework. The Joint Task Force Transformation Initiative. The JTITI Interagency Working Group came together to produce a unified information security framework for the federal government. Those members came from NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Department of Defense, ODNI, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, and the Committee on National Security Systems. So these four organizations came together to produce a security framework for the federal government to use. Out of that, they produced 5 core NIST FISMA documents that define the risk management process, develop the risk management framework to improve information security, and encourage reciprocity among organizations. You think about all the thousands of federal entities that you have. If we can get them on the same page with respect to managing risk, then we can trust each other's handling of our information security systems and our data. So the 5 core documents are 839, Managing Information Security Risk. I've done videos on that. You can find them on my YouTube channel. 830 is the Guide for Conducting Risk Assessments. I will record those soon. 837, we're doing that now. That's the Risk Management Framework. Again, 53 is your controls catalog, and 53A is how to assess those controls. All federal organizations use these documents, or they're moving toward using the documents. In 2016, the Office of Management and Budget revised the document on managing federal information as a strategic resource to include specific responsibilities for privacy programs under the risk management framework. And that's Circular A130 if you want to go look that up. That's OMB Circular A130. Okay, the NIST Risk Management Framework, let's get into it. It provides a dynamic and flexible approach to effectively manage information security and privacy risk in diverse environments with complex and sophisticated threats, changing missions, and system vulnerabilities. The framework emphasizes risk management by building security and privacy capabilities into information systems throughout the system development lifecycle. By maintaining awareness of the security and privacy posture of information systems on an ongoing basis through continuous monitoring, and also by providing information to senior management to facilitate decisions about the acceptance of risk to your operations, assets, individuals, other organizations, and the nation that arise from the operation and use of systems. Okay, there's 7 goals of the risk management framework. The first goal is to provide a repeatable process designed to promote the protection of information and information systems commensurate with risk. And keep that in mind. Whatever you're doing to secure your systems, you want to be sure that it's in line with the actual risk that your organization is facing. The second goal of the risk management framework is to emphasize organization-wide preparation that's necessary to manage security and privacy risk. The third goal is to facilitate the categorization of information and systems, the selection, implementation, assessment, and monitoring of controls and the authorization of information systems and common controls. So you want to categorize your information and the information systems, whether that's high, medium, or low, the selection, implementation, assessment, and monitoring of controls, and the authorization of information systems and common controls, because somebody has to authorize every system in a federal space before it can go online and be used in the business. So someone has to specifically accept the risk associated with operating that system. Okay, let me stay focused. The fourth goal of the risk management framework is to promote, and this is in no particular order, guys, is to promote near real-time risk management and ongoing system and control authorization by implementing robust continuous monitoring processes. The fifth goal is to encourage the use of automation to provide your leadership with the necessary information to make cost-effective risk-based decisions for information systems that support the business functions. The sixth goal of the risk management framework is to facilitate the seamless integration of security and privacy requirements and controls into enterprise architecture, the systems development lifecycle, your acquisition processes, and your systems engineering processes. You literally want to bake security into everything that you're doing. The seventh goal of the risk management framework is to connect risk management processes at the organization and mission business process level to risk management processes at the information system level via the risk executive function. And the risk executive function is discussed extensively in my coverage of special publication 839. But basically, that's the person or entity that's in charge of information security risk management within the organization. The risk management framework establishes responsibility and accountability for controls that are implemented within information systems and inherited by those systems. Somebody is responsible and accountable for the information system and for the risk posture of that system. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about the purpose and applicability of 837. It provides guidelines for applying the risk management framework to information systems and organizations. The guidelines have been developed to ensure that managing system-related security and privacy risk is consistent with what's happening at the mission and business process level of your organization. So you start at the top where you envision the program and you talk about your goals and objectives for your IT security and your privacy management. And you come up with a strategy, and then 837 allows you to make sure that the actual stuff that you're doing at the system level is in line with what happened at the mission and the business process levels of your organization. And that's explained thoroughly in 839. To achieve security and privacy protections for organizational information and information systems through the implementation of appropriate risk response strategies is part of what the guidelines allow you to do. They give you the ability to achieve security and privacy protections through implementing appropriate risk response strategies. 837 also allows you to facilitate the implementation of the framework for improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity. And some of you are in critical infrastructure places like transportation, energy. Next, to ensure that security and privacy requirements and controls are effectively integrated into the enterprise architecture. SDLC processes, acquisition processes, and system engineering processes. Systems engineering is covered in Special Publication 800-160, Volume 1. And then to support consistent, informed, ongoing authorization decisions, because even when you authorize a system to operate, that's an ongoing decision. And so if you implement the guidance in 830 correctly, you will be able to set it up in a way that it supports you being able to have the information to give you what you need for ongoing authorization decisions, for transparency and traceability of security and privacy related information, and reciprocity. So, what is reciprocity? Reciprocity is an agreement among participating organizations, say two different federal agencies, to accept each other's security and privacy assessment results, to reuse system resources, or to accept each other's assessed security and privacy posture to share information. So, if we have reciprocity, then I can share my information with you because I know that your agency is going to handle it the same way that my agency would handle it. Reciprocity, however, does not apply to accepting the risk-based decisions of other organizations. Okay. The purpose of NIST Special Publication 837 Rev 2, and I know there's a lot of repetition here because I designed this presentation to align closely with the document itself. It helps organizations manage risk and satisfy the security and privacy requirements in FISMA. That's the Federal Information Security Modernization Act, the Privacy Act of 1974, the Federal Information Security Management Act, OMB policies, for example, Circular A130, and the Federal Information Processing Standards, also called FIPS, that are also developed by NIST. All right, next up, your target audience. The target audience for 837, that's people with mission or business ownership responsibilities or fiduciary responsibilities. This is going to be your executive leadership, or the heads of federal agencies. People with information system development and acquisition responsibilities. Those are going to be your program managers, your procurement officials, developers, system integrators, and your enterprise architects. And then people with information security, system security or privacy management and or oversight responsibilities. That's going to be your senior leaders, your risk executives, your authorizing officials, the chief information officers, senior agency information security officers, and your senior agency officials for privacy. In the private sector, that would be whoever is in charge of privacy and whoever is in charge of security. Also, people who are responsible for conducting security or privacy assessments and for monitoring information systems. These are going to be your control assessors, your auditors, and your systems owners. And finally, people with security or privacy implementation and operational responsibilities, the people who are at the system level making it happen. This is going to be your system owners, your common control providers, information owners, mission or business owners, security or privacy architects, and system security or privacy engineers. Okay, next up, we're going to cover the fundamentals of 837. And again, I know I'm moving quickly, but I will have time for questions at the end. The fundamentals, this chapter describes the basic concepts associated with managing information system related security and privacy risk, including system of interest, system elements, and how system boundaries are established. Risk management principles and best practices used in organization-wide strategic planning include security and privacy considerations in the SDLC processes, and security and privacy risk management practices and considerations associated with the supply chain. Okay, in this section, and this is chapter 2 of the publication, we'll look at organization-wide risk management, information security and privacy under the risk management framework, system and system elements, control allocation, security and privacy posture, and supply chain risk management. Okay, managing information system related security and privacy risk is a complex undertaking, and it requires the involvement of the whole organization, from senior leadership who provides the strategic vision and the top level goals and objectives for the organization, to mid-level leaders who plan and manage projects, down to individuals who actually do the developing, implementing, operating, and maintaining the systems that support your organization's mission and business functions. So everyone has to be involved in risk management. Risk management is a holistic activity that if you fully integrate it into every aspect of your organization, you're going to hit the mission and business planning activities. It's going to impact enterprise architecture, SDLC processes, system engineering activities that are integral to those system lifecycle processes, and security and privacy requirements are clearly articulated and communicated to each organizational entity to help ensure success. So there are 3 tiers of organization-wide risk management. Level 1 is at the organizational level. Level 2 is at the mission business process level. So these are your business units. And level 3 is your information system or system component level. And keep in mind, 837 is dealing with what happens at level 3 at the information system level. Okay, let's talk quickly about activities at levels 1 and 2. And this is covered in Special Publication 839. The activities conducted at level 1, your organization level, and level 2, your mission business process, are critical to preparing your organization to execute the steps and the guidance in the risk management framework. So before you get to 837, you need to take a close look at 839. Excuse me. Okay. Preparation involves a wide range of activities that go beyond managing the security and privacy risk associated with operating or using specific systems. I'm sorry. And includes activities that are essential to managing security and privacy risk appropriately throughout the organization. Preparation is important. Decisions about how to manage security and privacy risk, and we're still talking about activities that happen at levels 1 and level 2. The decisions cannot be made in isolation. Such decisions are closely linked to decisions regarding the business objectives of the organization. What are you trying to do? Because keep in mind, your systems are only there to enable the business. Modernization of information systems, components, and services to adopt new and innovative technologies. Levels 1 and 2 decisions also involve enterprise architecture and the need to manage and reduce the complexity of systems through consolidation, optimization, and standardization, thereby reducing the attack surface and the technology footprint that's exploitable in the first place. And then allocation of resources. This is your budget to ensure the organization can conduct its missions and business operations with a high degree of effectiveness, efficiency, and cost effectiveness. Level 1s and 2 preparation activities are assigning key roles and responsibilities for risk management processes. So this is at the governance level. You want to decide what are your security and privacy roles, what are they going to be, and who's responsible for what. Next up, establishing a risk management strategy and the organizational risk tolerance. Then 3, identifying the mission business functions and the business processes the information systems is intended to support. And then you want to identify the key stakeholders that have an interest in the information system. And then you want to identify and prioritize your assets, including your information assets or your data. Then you want to understand the threats to your information systems organizations, individuals. You want to know what threatens you. You want to conduct a risk assessment. You want to identify and prioritize the stakeholder protection needs and the security and privacy requirements. And then you want to determine the authorization boundaries and the systems of interest. You want to define information systems in terms of the enterprise architecture. And if you're a federal organization, you are probably familiar with the federal enterprise architecture. You can Google that. There's a whole documentation on what that entails. Then developing the security and privacy architectures that include controls suitable for inheritance by organizational systems. These are your common controls. That's covered in 853. And then you want to identify, align, and deconflict requirements. You want to allocate both security and privacy requirements to information systems and the environments in which those systems operate. So you want to know what you're protecting and why you're protecting it. The next step in the risk management process is to assess. So at levels tier 1 and 2, you are framing and you are assessing. You are framing the risk for the organization and you are assessing the risk. And then at the business unit, someone is framing the risk that happens with the different lines of business and doing risk assessments. Okay. I'm going to do an overview of level 3 activities. What happens at the system layer of the risk management framework. In contrast to level 1 and 2 activities that prepare the organization for execution of the risk management framework, level 3 addresses risk from an information system perspective and is guided and informed by the risk decisions that happened at levels 1 and 2. The risk decisions at level 1 and 2 will impact the selection and the implementation of controls at the system level. System security and privacy requirements are satisfied by selecting and implementing controls from the NIST 853 catalog. This special publication 853 control allocation. Security and privacy controls are allocated to the system as either system specific, hybrid, or common controls. How the controls are allocated will depend on the enterprise architecture, security or privacy architectures, and or tailored control baselines or overlays that have been developed by the organization or industry. And this is covered in my presentation on 853. Again, we're just quickly moving through this. In certain cases, when appropriate, controls are allocated to individual system elements. Controls are traceable to the security and privacy requirements that were established by the organization to ensure that there is transparency in the development of security and privacy solutions, and that the requirements are fully addressed during system design, development, implementation, and maintenance. If you wait until you get a system completely stood up and ready to operate before you start thinking about security, it's going to cost you more and it's going to be very, very difficult to do, which is why it's going to cost you more. So bake security in. I'm going to keep saying that. All right, the risk management process is iterative. Each level of the risk management hierarchy is a beneficiary of a successful risk management framework execution. Each level reinforces the iterative nature of the risk management process, where risk is framed, assessed, responded to, and monitored at each level of the organization. Without adequate risk management preparation at the organization level, security and privacy activities can become too costly, demand too many skilled security and privacy professionals, and produce ineffective solutions. So you have to actually think about this. Senior leadership actually has to think about this. If you start with the technology and just start bolting on solutions and technologies, you're not going to be effective. It's going to cost too much, and it's going to use up too many resources. Without adequate risk management preparation at the organizational level, security and privacy activities can become too costly. And I just said this, demand too many skilled security and privacy professionals, and produce ineffective solutions. So let me give you an example. Organizations that fail to define and implement an effective enterprise architecture strategy won't be able to consolidate, optimize, and standardize the IT infrastructure, which is going to result in unnecessary redundancy and ineffective and costly systems, applications, and services. Now, the effect of ill-conceived architectural and design decisions can produce a cost multiplier effect downstream that will adversely impact the ability of your organization to implement effective security and privacy solutions. Another example. Oh no, I just said that. That's a duplicate slide. Let me keep moving. All right, the holistic application of risk management concepts. Successful security, privacy, and risk management programs depend on a holistic application of the concepts to help ensure that there is a high degree of transparency and traceability of every programmatic element. The transparency and traceability promote a level of trust needed by senior leaders and executives to understand and to accept the security and privacy risk to the organization and to your assets and to your people. All right, now we're going to get into the weeds, the 7 steps in the risk management framework, and we're about halfway through. All right, the steps in the risk management framework, and this is what it looks like in Rev 1. It was, you started in revision 1 of this publication, you started with categorize, select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor. Those were the 6 steps. In 837 Rev 2, they've added a prepare step. So you start with preparation, and in another publication or on my blog, I will really flesh out what that prepare step is looking like, but you prepare to begin doing this process. And then you categorize, select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor. All right, step one, prepare to execute the risk management framework from an organization and system level perspective by considering a variety of inputs and carrying out specific activities that establish the context for managing security and privacy risk for the system of interest. Step two is categorize the system. Nine, and I also have a video. I have two videos, I believe, on how to do this particular step. Step three is select. This is where you select an initial set of controls for the system and you tailor the controls as needed based on your risk assessment and the local conditions where you operate the system. Step four, you implement the controls and you describe how the controls are employed within the system and its environment of operation. This is where you're doing your system security plan, and that's Special Publication 818. Step five is assess. Here you assess the controls to determine the extent to which the controls are implemented correctly, operating as intended, and producing the desired outcome with respect to meeting your security and privacy requirements for the system and satisfying your security and privacy policy. So you implement the controls, but then someone has to come back and assess each control to ensure that the controls they're in there correctly, they're operating as intended, and they're giving you the desired outcome. Assessment is covered in Special Publication 853A. Step six is authorize. You want to authorize the system or common controls based on a determination that the risk is acceptable. And someone has to specifically, and this is a senior management person with budgetary responsibility, who authorizes the system to operate based on looking at the risk and determining that that level of risk is acceptable. And then step seven, you want to monitor the system and the associated controls on an ongoing basis to include assessing the control effectiveness. You're documenting changes to the system and to the environment of operation. You're conducting risk assessments and impact analysis, and you're reporting the security and privacy posture of the system. So that's what's involved in the monitor step. More about the risk management framework steps. The steps can also be aligned with the system security engineering processes that are defined in this Special Publication 860, Volume 1. The steps can be carried out in any order. If executing the risk management framework for the first time, you will likely carry out the steps in sequential order. But once you stand up a system, you're going to loop through those steps in many different ways depending on your circumstances. Once the system is in operation in the maintenance phase of the SDLC, as part of the continuous monitoring steps, once you're in that phase, events may dictate non-sequential execution. The risk management approach selected by your organization may vary on a continuum from top down to decentralized consensus among peers. However, organizations in all cases use a consistent approach that is applied to risk management processes across the enterprise from the organization level to the information system level. Your senior management has to identify and secure the needed resources to complete the 837 risk management task and ensure that those resources are made available to the appropriate personnel. Someone at the top has to be on board if you are going to do security effectively, because they have to provide the budget and they also have to provide the tone at the top, which either supports you or does not. Next up, we're looking at information security and privacy under the risk management framework. Okay, information security programs versus privacy programs. What's the difference? Information security programs are responsible for protecting information and information systems from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, modification, or destruction in order to provide confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Privacy programs, on the other hand, are responsible for ensuring compliance with applicable privacy requirements and for managing the dissemination, disclosure, or disposal, collectively referred to as processing, of PII. Privacy programs are responsible for managing the risk to people that may result from the creation, collection, use, and retention of PII, the inadequate quality or integrity of PII, and the lack of appropriate notice, transparency, or participation. So those risks are all managed under a privacy program. So you need information security in order to facilitate privacy, but just because you have an information security program does not mean that you're adequately dealing with the privacy requirements associated with your systems. OMB Circular A130 in a 2016 revision requires integrating privacy into the risk management framework. And so this is what you're seeing in version 2 of 837. The 2016 revision of Circular A130 requires organizations to integrate privacy into the process. And the wording is, this circular requires organizations to use the risk management framework to manage privacy risk beyond those that are typically included under the confidentiality objective of the term information security. While many privacy risks relate to the unauthorized access or disclosure of PII, privacy risk may also result from other activities, including the creation, collection, use, and retention of PII, the inadequate quality or integrity of PII, and the lack of appropriate notice, transparency, or participation. And this is where you let people know that you're collecting PII. Tell them the reason why, tell them how you plan to use it. There's a whole lot involved, but keep in mind that just because you have security, it does not mean that you also have privacy requirements met. Okay, the relationship of information security programs and privacy programs under the risk management framework. Executing the risk management framework requires collaboration between info security and privacy programs. The objectives of both programs are overlapping and complementary. They're both looking at CIA. When a system processes PII, the information security program and the privacy program have a shared responsibility for managing the risks to people that may arise from unauthorized system activity or from behavior. So this requires that the two programs collaborate when selecting, implementing, assessing, and monitoring security controls. However, protecting individual privacy cannot be achieved solely by securing PII. Not all privacy risks arise from unauthorized system activity or behavior, such as unauthorized access or disclosure. Some privacy risks may result from authorized activity that is beyond the scope of information security, and that's what your privacy program addresses. So let's talk about the difference between privacy controls, security controls, and controls. OMB Circular A130 defines a privacy control as an administrative, technical, or physical safeguard employed to ensure compliance with applicable privacy requirements and to manage privacy risk. A130 defines a security control as a safeguard or countermeasure prescribed for an information system or organization to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the system and its information. Controls that achieve both privacy and security objectives are referred to as controls in 837. When 837 uses the descriptors privacy or security with the term control, it is referring to those controls in circumstances where they are selected, implemented, and assessed for particular objectives, either privacy or security. Okay, privacy programs implement, assess, and monitor privacy controls to ensure compliance with applicable privacy requirements and to manage privacy risk from authorized and unauthorized processing. Privacy programs also select, implement, assess, and monitor privacy controls. Those controls are listed in Special Publication 853, Appendix J. I understand 853 is going to be redone. I know there's a Rev 5, and I think the controls privacy controls have been moved out of the appendix and into the regular body of controls. I could be wrong. I'll check that. Organizations manage risk under the risk management framework, including both the risk from authorized processing of PII and the risks that come from unauthorized system activity or behavior. The only risk management framework step that does not consider the risks that arise from the authorized processing of PII is the categorize step. Okay. Categorization is based on a security risk assessment, which informs whether the impact on operations and assets and individuals from a loss of CIA is low, moderate, or high. It's not looking at privacy. So that's the only step in the risk management framework that does not consider the risk from the authorized processing of PII. And that's what this looks like. In your risk management steps, you'll notice in this graphic, you're looking at authorized PII processing that's covered in your prepare step, in your select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor. It is not considered in categorize. Except for system boundary determination, security and privacy requirements allocation, and system description, categorization tasks are not applicable to the authorized processing of PII aspect of privacy risk management. Okay, from 853 Rev 4 Appendix J, here's your list of privacy controls. And the catalog fleshes that out a lot more, but you have controls related to authority and purpose. That's the authority to collect PII, and then the purpose where you tell the user what you're collecting that information for. You want to look at accountability, audit, and risk management controls. That's the governance and privacy program, privacy impact and risk assessments, privacy requirements for contractors and service providers. You're looking at privacy monitoring and auditing, privacy awareness and training, privacy reporting, privacy enhanced system design and development, and accounting of disclosures. Then you have controls that relate to data quality and integrity, controls that relate to data minimization and retention, controls related to individual participation and redress. This is where the consumer can consent, have access, redress, and have a complaint management process. All of those are part of the privacy controls that you put in place to ensure that you're in compliance with privacy regulations. Then you have security controls, and that's where you do an inventory of your PII, and you do privacy incident response, and you plan out how you're going to do that. Then you have transparency controls. Those are your privacy notice, your system of records notice and privacy act statements, and dissemination of privacy program information. And then you have use limitation, and this will govern internal use and information sharing with third parties. Again, it's a family of controls, the privacy controls. All right, let's look at system and system elements. We are on slide 71. I think we're going to 118. So hang in there, guys. I appreciate your patience, and I'm going to keep moving quickly. System and system elements, systems and the SDLC. It's important to describe information systems in the context of the 5-phase systems development lifecycle and how security and privacy capabilities are implemented within the basic components of those systems. And that's going to be initiation, development, acquisition, implementation, operation, maintenance, and disposal. If your organization is executing the risk management framework, then you take a broad view of the entire life cycle of information systems development to provide a contextual relationship and linkage to architectural and engineering concepts that will allow security and privacy issues to be addressed throughout the life cycle and at the appropriate level of detail to help ensure that such capabilities are achieved. You want your security people in the room. I just had a call from a colleague who's was informed. She's in charge of privacy. No, she's in charge of security, and she got a call that Microsoft was coming in to help them decide what they were going to do with respect to moving to the cloud. The meeting was held, and she was not invited. We all know that that's an invitation to some security issues down the line. ISO IEC IEEE 15288 provides an architectural and engineering view of an information system and the entities that the system interacts with in its environment of operation. Information systems. Federal law defines an information system as a discrete set of information resources organized for the collection, processing, maintenance, use, sharing, dissemination, or disposition of information. ISO 15288 defines a system as a set of interacting elements organized to achieve one or more stated purposes. Every system, however you define it, operates within an environment that influences the system and its operation. Okay, what are your system elements? System elements include technology or machine elements. It includes people or human elements and physical or environmental elements. Individual system elements or a combination of system elements may satisfy stated system requirements and may be implemented via hardware, software, or firmware, physical structures or devices, or people, processes, policies, and procedures. All of those elements combine to create a system. Interconnections between system elements allow those elements to interact as necessary to produce a capability as specified by your system requirements. That's a lot, right? We're going to keep going. So let's talk about system of interest. A system of interest is the set of system elements, system element interconnections, and the environment in which the system operates. Determines the authorization boundary for the execution of the risk management framework. So when you're executing the risk management framework, you do need a boundary that includes what you're going to apply the risk management framework to. The system of interest may be supported by one or more enabling systems that provide support during the system lifecycle. But keep in mind that the enabling systems are not within the authorization boundary of the system of interest and don't necessarily exist in the operational environment of the system of interest. Then you have other systems, and I put that in quote. And those are systems that the system of interest interacts with in the operational environment. These other systems are outside of the authorization boundary and may be the beneficiaries of services provided by the system of interest, or they may simply have some general interaction. Keep in mind the risk management framework is applied to an authorization boundary. The risk management framework, including the authorization process, is applied to an authorization boundary that can be conceptualized as a system of interest, not to individual system elements. Keep in mind, you're applying the risk management framework to an authorization boundary and everything that's within that boundary, not to individual system elements. Organizations can employ component level assessments for system elements and can take advantage of the assessment results generated during that process to support risk-based decision making for the system. For example, the Common Criteria Evaluation provides independent component level assessments for individual IT products. Okay, let's look at a conceptual view of the system of interest. So within the blue triangle, the big blue triangle, you have a number of system elements that are combined to create the system of interest. Outside of the triangle, you have enabling systems that provide services for the system of interest, but they're not within your authorization boundary. So for risk management framework purposes, they don't apply. And then you have other systems that interact with your system of interest, but again, they're outside your authorization boundary. All right, your risk management activities on the SDLC. Risk management activities begin early in the SDLC and continue throughout the entire life cycle. They help to shape their security and privacy capabilities of the system. They ensure that the necessary controls are implemented. They ensure that security and privacy risks are adequately addressed on an ongoing basis, and ensures that the authorizing officials understand the current security and privacy posture of the system in order to accept the risk. All right, control allocation. There are three types of controls. You have system-specific controls, and they provide a security or privacy capability for an information system. You have common controls that provide a security or privacy capability for multiple systems. And then you have hybrid controls that have system-specific and common characteristics. Okay, what is control allocation? Control allocation is the process employed to determine whether controls are going to be system specific, common, or hybrid, and to assign the controls to the specific system elements responsible for providing a security or privacy capability. Controls are allocated to a system or an organization consistent with the organization's enterprise architecture and security or privacy architecture. So, of course, you have to have that in place before you start control allocation. Security control allocation also occurs during the SDLC process as part of requirements engineering. Again, you want to be thinking about security and privacy requirements at the beginning. So let's talk about common controls and why you use them. You're encouraged to identify and implement common controls that can support multiple information systems as a common protection capability. When your common controls are used to support a specific system, they are referenced by that system as inherited controls. Common controls promote cost effective, efficient, and consistent security and privacy safeguards across your business. Common controls can also simplify risk management processes and activities. So, who participates in control allocation? Let me give you an example of a common control. Common control, the easiest example is your security, your physical security. So you have a common control. You have systems that need to be behind locked doors. So you already have the say the fence around the building. You have the building and the doors and the locks, and you have the security guard, and all of that becomes a common control that supports all of the information systems within that particular facility. Now, for say your server room, you may have additional controls that are specific to that server system, but you also have the common controls that support many different systems within a facility. So that's just one example. All right, who participates in control allocation? Control allocation is organization wide. It involves your senior agency official for risk management, authorizing officials, system owners, common control providers, the CIO, the CISO, the chief privacy officer, the system security or privacy officers, your enterprise architect, and your security and privacy architects. Allocation assigns responsibility and accountability. So by allocating controls to a system as system specific controls, hybrid controls, or common controls, then you are assigning responsibility and accountability to specific organization entities for developing, implementing, assessing, authorizing, and monitoring those controls. So if I assign a control to a system for which you are the owner, then you are now responsible for developing, implementing, assessing, authorizing, and monitoring that specific control. Controls may be allocated to specific system elements. The control selection process is conducted primarily at the system level. It may not always be necessary to allocate every control in the tailored baseline to each system element. You can save resources by allocating controls to only those system elements that require such protection. I mean, you don't need a firewall on a system that doesn't have access to the outside. If it's air gapped, then you don't need a firewall. So it's that kind of thing. But if you're not thinking about those things, you may just apply firewalls to every system that you have. And in that instance, you'll be wasting money. I think I said that right. All right. Control allocation also produces risk related information for senior leaders, including your authorizing officials, about the security and privacy posture of systems and the business processes supported by those systems. And that's going to look like your system security plan, your privacy plans, your system security assessment report, your privacy assessment report, your plans of action and milestones, your common controls, security and privacy plans, your security assessment report, and your plan of action and milestones for your common controls. This is the information that supports authorization and ongoing authorization decisions. So when you're done with the risk management framework, you put together an authorization package that supports the authorization decision and includes all the information that a senior manager would need to know to really understand the risk posture and what's going on within the system. Here's a graphic of what it looks like, organization-wide control allocation, that is, where you have your common controls and then you have your systems. And for every system, you're going to have a system security plan, a security assessment report, a privacy plan, a privacy assessment report, and a plan of action and milestones to identify how you're going to overcome any deficits to what you intended versus what's actually implemented. Okay, common controls and authorizations. When your authorizing officials issue a common control authorization, they're addressing the security and privacy risk related to systems that can potentially inherit those controls. Authorizing officials that issue an authorization to operate or authorization to use Also consider the security and privacy risk associated with the actual inheritance of the common controls identified by the organization for the system they are authorizing. So the common control authorization addresses the risk in providing common controls to system owners, and the system authorization addresses the risk of receiving or using the inherited controls. And I discussed this in my video on authorizations. All right, next up, let's talk about security and privacy posture. Security and privacy posture represents the status of the information system and information resources based on information assurance resources and the capabilities in place to manage the defense of the organization, to comply with privacy requirements and manage privacy risk, and to react as the situation changes. Understanding the security and privacy posture of your information systems and the common controls that they inherit is key to the authorizing official's ability to make risk-based decisions. Continuous monitoring and assessing of controls. The security and privacy posture is determined on an ongoing basis by assessing and continuously monitoring the controls that you've implemented. The control assessments and monitoring activities provide evidence that the controls are implemented correctly, operating as intended, and satisfying the security and privacy requirements in response to any business requirements, laws, regulations, policies, or standards that your organization complies with or is subject to. Your authorization officials use the security and privacy posture to determine if the risk is acceptable based on the risk management strategy and the organizational risk tolerance that you agreed upon in levels 1 and level 2 when you were going through the risk management process. All right, let's discuss briefly supply chain risk management. We're almost there. We're on slide 98. Okay, why is supply chain risk management needed? Because we are becoming increasingly reliant on external providers, third-party providers for components, products, systems, and services that we need to carry out important business functions. Organizations remain responsible and accountable for the risk incurred when using external suppliers. And we've had some breaches that have come through third-party suppliers. Okay, you establish relationships with your external providers by joint ventures, business partnerships, contracts, interagency agreements, line of business agreements, licensing agreements, and/or outsourcing arrangements. Some supply chain risks include insertion of counterfeits, unauthorized production, tampering, theft, insertion of malicious software and hardware, shoddy manufacturing, and poor development practices. So we have supply chain risk. Or why do we have supply chain risk? Decreased visibility into and understanding of how the technology acquired is developed, integrated, and deployed. So when we're buying technology, we're limited in what we know about how that technology is acquired, developed, integrated, and deployed. Then we have limited knowledge and or control of the processes, procedures, and practices that are used by the third party, by our supply chain, to ensure the integrity, security, resilience, and quality of the acquired products, systems, and services. So, some challenges to managing supply chain risk. Well, defining the types of products, systems, and services that are outsourced, describing how the product, systems, and services are protected in keeping with the security and privacy requirements of your organization, and then obtaining the necessary assurances that the risks that come from outsourcing can be avoided, mitigated, or accepted. So you want to develop a supply chain risk management policy that guides and informs supply chain risk management activities, that supports applicable organizational policies. That's going to be your procurement policies, your information security and privacy, quality, supply chain, and logistics. The supply chain policy should address the goals and objectives in your organization's strategic plan, specific mission and business functions, and the internal and external customer requirements. You want to define the integration points for supply chain risk management with the risk management and the SDLC processes. And you want to define supply chain risk management related roles and responsibilities, any dependencies among those roles, and interaction among the roles. So let's do a summary of risk management framework tasks, and this is the actual process. The way the risk management framework structures the steps and tasks. Each step in the risk management framework has a purpose statement, a defined set of outcomes, and a set of tasks that are carried out to achieve the outcomes. Each task contains a set of inputs needed to execute the task and a set of potential outputs that come from executing the task. Each task describes the phase of the SDLC where the task execution takes place and the risk management roles and responsibilities associated with the task. There is a discussion section and references to provide information on how to effectively execute each task. So that's the structure of the steps and the task in the risk management framework. And let me show you what that looks like. So here is the prepare task at the organizational level. At the top in the blue box, it tells you the purpose of the prepare step, that is to carry out activities at the organization, mission, business process level to help prepare the organization to manage its security and privacy risk using the risk management framework. And then it talks about the prepare task, and it's going to be at the organizational level. This is what happens if you're preparing at the top level. You have 7 tasks. And so you have the task definition in the blue column, and then the outcomes that you expect from each task. So that's what it looks like. And that's going to be in the appendix of 837. So your risk management strategy, here's task 2. This is a sample task. It gives you a definition of task 2. Establish a risk management strategy for the organization that includes a determination of risk tolerance. It tells you that your potential inputs are your mission statement, your policies, risk assumptions. Then it tells you that the output of the risk management step is the risk management strategy. Then you have the primary responsibility is the head of agency, your supporting roles, some discussion about that particular task, and then the references or the documentation that you need to support the work that you're doing there. Okay, for example, table E1 is your prepare task at the organizational level. You have 7 tasks, your risk management role, strategy, assessment, control baseline and profiles, common control. So you have in table E1, the tasks are identified. And that's at the organization level. I'm looking at the prepare step because I think that's pretty important. And then here's where you prepare at the system level. You're looking at the business focus, the stakeholders, you're identifying your assets, your authorization boundaries, your information types, the information life cycle for systems that process PII, your risk assessment for the system, your protection needs, your enterprise architecture, and your system registration. So this is happening when you're preparing at the system level. Then table E2 talks about your categorization task. This is where you do security categorization, review, and approval, and your system description. E3 is your selection task. E4 is implementation. E5 is assessment. E6 deals with authorization task, where you have your authorization package, your risk analysis and determination, your risk response, the authorization decision, the authorization reporting, and the plan of actions and milestones. These are all tasks that you need to do in that step. E7, and these are appendices, tables in Appendix E of 837, talks about your monitoring task and what happens to set up your monitoring. And that is the NIST Special Publication 837. And I know I drug you quickly through that. Keep in mind, if you listen to this on YouTube, you can slow the speed down, and you can listen to this while you're driving in your car. I hope that it's been of value to you. I thank you so much for your time and attention. I don't take that lightly. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.